Clubhouse.
Jill, ask them what they think about supervillain.
That sounds better to me. More exciting.
Do you prefer saving America? How about saving the world?
Nope. It's saving America.
Previously on The Boys, the dust from election night hasn't settled and the city's still in turmoil. Butcher is battling the clock as Temp V gnaws at his insides. He's hell-bent on saving Ryan, who's been yanked into Homelander's sinister orbit. Meanwhile, the boys are on a mission to TruthCon, the epicenter of political deceit and power plays. They're out to expose Victoria Neuman and finish what they started, but the stakes are sky high and failure is not an option. Ryan, caught in a deadly game, pulls off a scripted save, orchestrated by Homelander to cement his legacy. But it's all smoke and mirrors, and Ryan is caught in the crossfire of his father's twisted plans. Annie, trying to shed her Starlight alter ego, is caught between two worlds. She's wrestling with her past while trying to forge a new path as Annie January. But the superhero life keeps pulling her back in. In the meantime, A-Train's hit rock bottom, faced with the bitter truth that he's no hero and never has been. He's grappling with his identity and trying to find his place in a world that's moved on without him. And high above the city, Homelander confronted his own mortality, recruits Sage, the brainiac superhero. Together, they're concocting a new plan, making Homelander more dangerous than ever before. Welcome back to Podcast V. This is Pod Clubhouse's coverage for the 4th season of The Boys. This is for the 3rd episode. This is Paul here with Kat again.
Hey.
Hey.
Happy to be back.
Glad you made it. What's this one called, Kat?
It's called We'll Keep the Red Flag Flying Here.
We'll keep...
Short and sweet.
Yeah, not weird to try to figure out or anything. Maybe we'll understand it as we go through the details of this episode. Doesn't strike a bell immediately, though. Red flags are danger signs, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of red flags in this one.
All right. Well, I thought this one broke down into 3 lines. There was what was going on with Ryan, and that involves both Butcher and to a lesser extent Kessler. We have the business with Homelander and the new members of the Seven, as well as that meetup with Neuman at the disastrous rehearsal for Vought on Ice, or whatever they were calling it. And then we had the other members of the boys. But trying to forge an alliance with A-Train. Where do you want to start with this week's podcast?
I mean, the Vought on Ice was pretty crazy.
For sure. So, with the meeting of the new members of the Seven, when they finally got down to business, that's when Sage lets everybody know that she has figured out that there's a leak, and they start to center on the Deep. It's funny having this character that's smart. I almost think of her as like omniscient, but there's no reason I should think that other than in stories with people that are supposed to be as smart as she is, they have a really, uncanny way of knowing everything. So instantly I was wondering, does she already know that A-Train is the leak?
Yeah, I don't know. And given what she does with the Deep later, I wonder if that's just like a ploy to kind of obviously get him on her side, because she's trying, we've talked about in the last episode, and we did see, it was nice to see some of the predictions kind of come true or questions we were asking and them get answered in this one, of like, Homelander definitely is still not following exactly everything. She says like, I'm disagreeing with you, so are you punishing me, making me wear this suit and be in public? It's funny because he wanted the smartest person in the world and was going to follow her exactly, but then not really following exactly what she's doing, like what she says.
He keeps putting his own twist on everything. Exactly,
but I wonder if she is accounting for that because she's supposedly really smart, right? So I wonder if like these side plots with the Deep is something, or is it just fun for her? I would think she would know that A-Train is the one, because if she deduces everybody, he's the one that's kind of had a lot to lose. He, his family and stuff. So I'm sure she's already gone through the files of all of them, and that's why she knows like Deep is probably the weakest link and easy to manipulate.
Right, easiest to manipulate. I mean, there's just a lot about a security leak that just knowing the characters. A-Train makes a lot more sense than the Deep. Deep has gone through a lot to like rehabilitate his image and stay. Remember, he got demoted and he had to come back to the 7. He doesn't have anything else. he is the 7, or he's nothing. And then you add in just the factor that A-Train could do it, just physically do it the easiest. Even though she didn't lead to him directly, instead of accusing him right then, I had it in the back of my mind that maybe she already knew that A-Train was the obvious choice.
I think so, because even when the Deep goes, when he kind of goes to Sage later and says like,
"Is that
hey,
a bloomin' onion?"
Yeah. But like he went in there kind of like, hey, how could you take me off a security detail or whatever? And then she smartly, of course, defects him, has the blooming onion. I think like it feels like she was ready for the Deep to come and do that, and anticipating it and ready to kind of like sway him and then do whatever she was doing, like maybe take one for the team or for her for her ultimate plan. So that one, excuse the pun, just seems fishy. So it just is not adding up with her. And I think she's keeping A-Train. And if she does know that A-Train did it, why does she not rat on him? So a little sus on her end, but I kind of like it because I like that she's a wild card in this. Like, she's for Homelander, but also feels like she's on her own.
Yeah.
Because they don't feel like a team at all.
No.
They don't feel like half the team there doesn't want to be there or is forced to be there. And then the ones that are coming in have their own agendas or kind of, they're just happy to be there. I mean, even though the first team like that we were introduced to weren't very team-like anyway, it felt more cohesive, and this one just feels like a mishmash. So, and Homelander's just trying to keep it together, but Sage is still TBD on me. I can't read her, what she's trying to do.
It's a big trick to play on us audience members, because then it keeps us second guessing what we think we can expect out of a character, because she has proven on screen that she is the smartest person in the room. She sets up these things and then they work out. There's a reason that she advocated for Firecracker to be on the team. She hasn't shared it yet, but it's all about riling up the Starlighters in a way, creating this massive conflict to bring that to a head.
I did like, though, her costume, her superhero costume. She made it, even though it's cheesy, she made it look cool with her like brown shades and everything. So I thought I like her as a character. I think she's just a wild card to me, which makes it interesting.
I'm going to jump around just a little bit, but in the plot, we know that Neuman goes to that Vought on Ice rehearsal and hears this plan laid out by Sage, which is in like direct conflict of the same kinds of stuff that Singer had told her earlier that day. Singer was talking about basically putting a leash on Soups, keeping them out of the military, keeping them out of the police, keeping them just as entertainers only. Sage outlines this plan that not only can she get her into the presidency, but at a cost. She has to reduce all kinds of restrictions on Soups. Again, that's where Homelander goes off script and adds that she needs to out herself as well to make the deal. We don't get her answer, though, before the Huey sweat drop happens and all hell breaks loose. What do you think? Where do you think Newman's head is at? Do you think she buys into Sage's plan and will call them back? or do you think she thinks that's nuts and just will stick to her own plan?
Yeah, I don't know. It was nice, though, because we also got answers in that realm of, what is Victoria's ambition? What is she doing? And so she does want to be president. But when Homelander point blank asked her, like, why do you want to be president? Because she doesn't want to give up her identity as a Soup to the public. She didn't answer that.
No.
And he just said, "Oh, you're really messed up by I forget his name. Who?
Stanley.
Stan. Yeah. And she just kind of looked like she didn't know what to do. So it kind of like answered that, like maybe she is, or she has her own plans. I don't know why she doesn't want to reveal why she's a Soup. I mean, she knows that she's going to be a target, but if she's the president and would have that power, I mean, why would she be scared? You know, because basically if she was a president, she reveals she's a soup. All soups who are kind of in hiding or are just everywhere across the nation or the world would be able to kind of come out of the shadows and would be on her side. So if she is going to get to the presidency, then what's the point of her hiding out?
Yeah.
You know, they want that bill to not go into effect, but if she's not a soup or doesn't reveal it, it wouldn't make sense for her. So she would have to reveal it at some point, especially being president. So I don't know what her ultimate plan is then.
She seems to be in it for her and hers, Zoe, since we don't know of anybody else, but not really in it for the soups as a species. Mm-hmm. That's a kind of a take that we haven't really appreciated on this show, that humans seem to be either anti-soup or, you know, embarrassingly pro-soup. and then there's the soups that are famous, and we've seen some other kind of down on their luck soups. Remember Haley Joel Osment was sort of like a loser soup, or Lamplighter was like a jaded soup. But they're still, I would say, generally pro-soup, but they are anti-Vought at that point, when they've reached that level, being chewed up by the corporate machine. But we've not really seen a soup that's just like, yeah, I'm fine being a soup. I'm going to use my powers, but I am not going to help any of you with this issue.
Which, I mean, is kind of something that mirrors, you know, society as well. Like you think like, oh, there's going to be this person that's going to help everyone, and then they actually don't. So I think it's kind of grounded in reality in that way.
It is surprising when you find that, isn't it?
Yeah.
At least it kind of is. It's something about, I don't know, a person with whatever that trait, that characteristic is, and that
you think you can relate to, and that they will be on your side.
And then they're just not.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, okay. It's like, it's almost more shocking because you thought it would be helpful. Mm-hmm. And it seems like she, in talking to Sage and Homelander, I mean, Homelander's just different because he's a wild card in himself, being crazy and being like the all-powerful soup. So no one is kind of on his side. They're just tolerating him and not trying to provoke him, which I think she tries to do. And since she probably has tried to head pop him and can't, she has to tolerate him. But you can tell like she has a disdain for them. And I don't know if it's the ones that are using their power for that sort of like the Vought-is of it, but he also asked her, like, are you embarrassed? Are you ashamed of yourself? But then why would she turn Zoe into a soup if she was?
Yeah.
It's sort of wanting to be elite, but not wanting to hang out with the peasants or something.
Or the other elite.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I'll build my own castle. Thanks.
Yeah.
You guys can stay out there.
She did kind of make a play to save Huey in that instance, but she also didn't try really hard to save him.
Right. Well, I mean, Homelander went ape shit right then. I mean, cutting people in half, and then Jesus started just killing people and dismembering people left and right.
Oof. I mean, honestly, that was really fun. That was a fun scene. I mean, given the last episode too, like, I mean, we didn't really care about the guy that, you know, split in so many parts or whatever, right?
Splinter,
like we knew he was, we probably knew he was going to die and whatever. So like, it was just fun to watch. But in this one, it actually felt, because Huey is not soup, it felt like there was tension. I felt like kind of on the edge of my seat of, oh, Huey's actually in trouble. And like, how is he going to get out of this? And it was like different than what we've seen before. And in the middle of it, there was the mayhem and, you know, all the Vought people, Vought on ice, you know, was no more. But it was fun, and it felt like a little chase, you know, and I don't think we've had that in a bit, where, because it's always soup against soup, and they always run to each other. Usually we don't see the people, you know, Huey has to run away because he has no chance. So it was kind of fun to see that stakes of it all, of him like seeing the humanness of it. It kind of made it, and him just going on the rampage and going crazy, and Huey trying to get away from it, and then A-Train saving him.
Maybe that was the big third episode set piece that I was looking for, but I didn't really appreciate it because there wasn't other soups involved so much. You know, like the big fight on the beach with the exploding whale and all that from previous season openers. It was wild and crazy action, but it was, I mean, it was a lot of stunts too, and and special effects work. So maybe that's it. But yeah, the ongoing Huey A-Train story. We'll hit that when we get there. All right, so we have already talked a little bit about the deep, but we saw some more with the octopus in this one.
She's feeling neglected.
Yeah, she is. Did you see in the credits who the octopus is?
Yes, Miss Tilda Swinton.
We get notes from Amazon about stuff they don't want us to spoil before a certain date, like if you were doing like an episodic preview. And the identity of the octopus was one of those things for episode 1 that they didn't want people to spill before the episode came out. Yeah, so I guess they kept that under wraps.
Yeah, that was funny.
What do you suppose makes the deep attractive to Sage? Is it just that, physically he's a handsome guy? Or I had sort of like this theory that like, it's sort of like how a little why Rick hangs out with Morty.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'm just trying to read too much into it and want it to be some plot thing or her using him. But I do think it's nothing like, yes, he's, hot, but like he's also really dumb and she's not. So it's weird that, and she's easily manipulating him. And I wonder if that's what's making him attractive to her. But also maybe she knows, because we're assuming that she's really smart and she knows everything, that maybe she knows that the octopus is in his room.
Ooh, I didn't even consider that.
And yeah, and especially because, of course, when they show something in a TV episode, we know that it always comes back. So the fact that the Tilda Swinton is saying, hey, I'm missing you, we haven't been intimate in a week, like, things like that. And then all of a sudden he gets intimate with someone else, like, she's probably going to know, like, and then that's going to cause issues between them. Maybe the octopus goes crazy and does something, or, it feels like she did it on purpose. So I feel like it's more because of that than her being attracted to the deep.
That exchange was just so funny. Is that a bloomin' onion? Yeah. You want some? Yeah.
And then like, you're so hot.
Oh, man. All right. So when Annie breaks into Firecracker's room and Firecracker tells her why she hates her guts, is that realistic in kind of girl world rules to harbor a grudge into adulthood and turn it into this crusade to tear down another person's life? Or is that sort of just like the social media influencer aspect added on to that sort of thing? What do you think?
I think it can go that far.
Well, that's a good perspective.
Even now, I think high school and that age, especially I think because of the age she says she was 12 or 13, I can't remember, but those are such formative years where you remember everything. Like, it's funny because, there's things, I'm in like my mid 30s now, and I still think about things that have happened when, not like I'm not keeping any grudges, but like you have such seared memories of like, I remember when I was running in front of like in a school thing and I like fell down, and I still like think like, oh, how cringe. And I'm like, no one even cares about that. But like, it's hard for me to remember last week, but those like formative years from junior high or, elementary, you remember all the things that happened to you, especially the things like when people were mean to you or something like that. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for someone to harbor a grudge, especially in that way, where she would have been a completely different person, and she probably wouldn't have been the podcast person or influencer going against Starlight if Starlight hadn't done that to her. So I think we are...
Good point.
She was going down the path that sort of like a Starlight thing, but it just Starlight made it before her, and she was ruthless, like she said, because of her mom. So she was kind of an innocent bystander in that way. And then, when people are mean to you, either kind of like buckle in, or you just, she went the opposite way and was like, okay, I'm going to make my life's mission to kind of, out someone who was really mean to me. It sort of also mimics the high school analogy of like, if people were mean to you, but then you meet that person later on, they could be a different person. Like Annie says, is like, I'm not that person anymore.
I really hope that my high school classmates are forgiving.
But you will always remember that person. Unfortunately, she will always remember Starlight as the person who did that to her. Mm-hmm. So even if she has made, like, and he's not that person anymore, when you are mean to someone or you do something horrible, like that is the impression you give, and like that's the feeling that they're always going to remember. So I kind of get it. I don't approve of like the firecracker thing that she went down, because also it's like, hey, have some dignity, like let it go a little bit. But
Yeah.
but I can understand why she hates Starlight and would do that.
Well, I think it's going to come to more than this. Hating Starlight for a girlhood grudge is perhaps enough motivation, but I don't know that Sage brought her in just to be a low-level rabble-rouser like that. There's probably got to be something more that she is going to use Firecracker to spread.
I think so too. I think that's a bonus. I think it helps with the Starlight situation, but being part of the Seven is a big deal. So they couldn't have just picked her for that one thing, like you said.
All right. So at the very end of the episode, we get another glimpse into Homelander's fractured psyche with the fractured mirror. We've seen him speak into the mirror in the past and answer himself. This time, there were multiple versions of Homelander's insides speaking to him, telling him positive, negative, in between kinds of comments. We've been noticing, though, that Homelander is kind of cracking. And this is, a very physical, obvious connection to that. Do you suppose that he might lose his shit this season, like in a way that is like undeniable, like makes him a very conspicuous enemy of all people of planet Earth? Or do you think we still got one more season until he gets that far?
So I think they might let that ride a little bit longer. I think it's either he loses his shit and he's just like completely crazy and all of Earth needs to fight against him or something. And then that would be kind of be season 5. Because if there's just one more season, I feel like he has to be there. Just like let's all round it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm not convinced that Billy is going to die. Unless they make like this season kind of be 1 month and then and then season 5 is like the rest of the time that he's like, quote unquote dying. Because he's been dying for 5-6 months for 3 episodes now.
Yeah. Well, it does come down to Billy. Billy's got the personal beef with Homelander.
Yeah. So I think they're definitely, for the long run, I think they're going to be there for season 5. But this one, it seems like he's unraveling. And so if we're going down that theme, then we saw him when he was mad at Ryan and be like, why am I not good enough for you? And
well, you mentioned in the last podcast, would he snap with Ryan?
yeah, and he did, because he, even in the beginning, he's like, smile, when they were doing their like presentation
right now.
Yeah, and it was like, okay, he's letting it out. And then when he gets mad at him for like going and visiting Billy, he sort of like had I don't know what else like a soup's migraine headache or stress headache or something. He couldn't handle not being accepted by Ryan, that like he was literally physically like making himself sick. That was interesting to see him break in that way. Like he couldn't handle it, and that's why, and then the voices come. So I wonder if that was sort of like a break and then the voices came back.
Yeah, well, maybe this was just like, we've seen him not being able to handle, like, say when he was watching the screens and Firecracker's talking to him and he can't even hear her because he's so focused on just his own anger. And then finally at the end, he throws that whatever it was and breaks the mirror. It's been mounting all season. I don't know if maybe it's just like, maybe he needs to bleed off a little steam in the form of violence, and then maybe he can center himself to whatever counts as normal for him. Or if it's just like, he'll just snap and that'll be it. Like he's crazy now.
Well, I really like this new plot line of that they're going into. I guess we're going into episode 4 of the voices were telling him, you got to go home and deal with it, like deal with your demons, sort of a therapy thing. So I wonder what that means, and if going home means going to home to someone, but we thought like that was already kind of done.
Well, he comes from the lab, so...
Yeah, so I'm like, what else could you do? Like, kill everyone in the lab and then be okay with it? Or, like, he's searching for something that he's never going to find, so he has to kind of, like, be zen. And I don't know if I want to see... I want to see it, but I don't think, in the boys' world, like, it's basically Homelander needs to find peace. And it's like, I don't know what his version of peace is.
Right. I don't think it's yoga mats and
No.
I don't think it's that.
I think it's probably killing 50 people and, not trying to figure it out, but I don't know.
Well, time will tell. In our next podcast, we'll confirm or not whether or not you were correct.
Yep.
All right. How about we go to Mother's Milk, A-Train, and that bunch? Did you notice that although Frenchie has been using drugs the whole time, he's been using a lot of drugs lately with Colin and that internal conflict?
Yeah.
Do you suppose that is just something we have to factor in with him, like how he was not useful during the fight with the traffickers with Kimiko because he was on LSD? Or do you think it could potentially lead to a plot point where he's actually ODs?
He's going through something like Kimiko said, and also it sort of came true in a different way. Remember, you were like, oh, are there going to be something? And he kind of got angry, or he got annoyed because she was like wanting to know stuff. And he's like, we're not boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever.
Right,
like, we're
yeah.
not together. It doesn't matter. And she got kind of, and it was funny because like they're really close, but they also don't share everything. Like Kimiko's also a closed book. She's going through her own stuff. So I thought it was kind of unfair for her to also be like, hey, what's going on with you? And she's also been very closed and doesn't want to share. And she was just drunk in the last episode and he had to take care of her. And then this episode, it was like they're their two like worst enemies. I mean, like they want to help each other, but then they like do the worst things. Like she was drunk in the last episode and then now he's on drugs. And yeah, it was just like really bad. And I feel like this, maybe the drugs line is just to help us, like it's kind of a device, like a writing device to kind of let us into his mind of what the past is without having to do a flashback. Like the drugs let us see what he's seen, the demons he's seen, without having to be so like, this is what his story is, And so I thought it was a creative way to kind of give us more insight to, oh, he has killed so many people and that's what's haunting him. And I think Colin has triggered that when he had suppressed it, because it's bringing up like, oh, I potentially love this person and would want a relationship, but I fucked it up because I've killed so many people, or I've killed his family, and then that's triggered like all the other killings he's done. And maybe he's thinking, who are the other Colins to those people I've killed?
That would weigh on a person, even Frenchie. That would explain why he takes the edge off with so many drugs. But I mean, even at this rate, it doesn't seem like the kind of show where they would do some sort of heavy overdose kind of plot, but you never know. He's doing a lot. It's a very charming aspect of this show and Gen V in the way that they represent kind of the altered state. Like, remember when Noir saw like cartoon characters?
Yeah.
There's a schizophrenic character in Gen V, and whenever he starts hallucinating, he sees people as Muppets. And so you can tell when his mind is playing tricks on him because he sees who he's dealing with as Muppets. And there's a fantastic fight scene where he's just tearing these Muppets apart. And when he wakes back up, there's actual human bodies laying all around him. But it was all of the fight was with Muppets.
Yeah, I really liked it in this fight. I think that there was so many good, coming from the last episode where I feel like it was a little bit more out there and gory and also just like, more sexual and like, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
This one, it was funny because I was like, oh, this is actually subdued and fun, but still also like fun in the way there was like ice right. Skates, chopping fingers, and
Jesus slit your throat with a
yeah. It just
skate.
felt very like OG boys, and so I liked it. Sort of like, if this episode isn't a filler, but I feel like it's kind of, it's moving the plot along and like giving us more information, but it's not like, I don't know, it just felt like a nice third episode kind of going into what we're expecting in the season. It set up a lot of things. And so I did appreciate it. And then the Kimiko and Frenchie scene, I really liked the little ducks and everything, but then it would be like gore, it was like actually what it was, but it was fun. And I think Kimiko and Frenchie are fun. So, I mean, they're also very dark and sad, but they're fun. So I like that little like touch. there is a lot of heavy themes going on in this episode, so it was kind of nice to kind of see that fight scene and then it mixed in with the very dark thing that Frenchie's going through, but also keeping it very boys and light and just, crazy.
Who do you suppose that woman was that both knew Kimiko's name and still wanted to stab her?
I mean, a fellow person who maybe was in with her, and like maybe I don't know if they had a relationship, but I don't know, maybe could she have a sister?
Well, remember there was a brother, right?
Yeah.
He was like a less powered
Yeah. At the very beginning, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if these are traffickers, then maybe it was someone that had dealt
Maybe
with...
she brought in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that sometimes they make you go, they use the kids to bring in more kids, right? So maybe that was something, but clearly, and she has a scar, so I wonder if Kimiko gave her that, or maybe when she escaped, she didn't take her with her.
Oh, because there does seem to be some hard feelings, don't there?
Yeah. And technically she was part of that organization still, but also could be doing it because she was
Can't
trafficked.
get out.
So yeah.
All right. Well, more to come on that. But definitely some historical connection there. Obviously, I'm going to go with, like you said, it was an escape attempt and she got left behind. Kimiko, brother, got out to wherever they got out to, and she's trapped in this world. We had talked about A-Train coming around. In this episode, he went even further. He talked with Mother's Milk. Mother's Milk tries to reason with him to get him to not force him, but make him convinced that this is something that he wants to do. He wants to be the hero that he always thought that he was. But, with A-Train, there's been steps forward and steps backwards. But at this point in the narrative, do you think we can expect A-Train to fully go double agent on us? Or do you think he'll always hold a little in reserve just in case?
Well, I mean, he's already been through a lot the first 3 seasons and he's done so much. And so I really hope that this season, it's not going to revert back to the same thing that we've seen. So I do think if there is going to be a casualty, like if we think that Billy and Homelander are going to make it through season 5, I'm not so sure that A-Train will. And it would be a great way to send him off if he does kind of do this redemptive arc and at least helps them have an advantage. So I don't know. I'm kind of going with it, but I still don't know because we've had this before and then he reverted back. But I also don't think he has anything to lose anymore. Like, yes,
right.
Death would be horrible, but I don't know. I don't think he really cares about it.
When he thought it was his brother calling him, he came right away.
Yes.
So he still has that need to feel worth it, to somebody. And he saved Huey, and he knows that he owes a lot to Huey. So it's probably more to come on this.
Yeah, and also maybe because he did have that, in the previous episode where he was talking about like all the saves are fake saves. And I wonder if saving Huey also kind of triggered like, oh, I saved somebody,
I like what you're saying. I think that would make an actual satisfying story for A-Train. Would be, he seems to want to help, particularly Huey and Starlight. He does so, but the boss finds out, and maybe he can't outrun laser beams.
Or maybe he's the key to helping Ryan, because maybe I'm not convinced Mother's Milk's not going to help Billy. So maybe this is his way of, if they get a soup on their side, that opens a lot more possibilities. And it's in his interest and the CIA's interest to get Ryan, right? So I think that's their number one objective. So maybe that's something A-Train can help with. But in doing so, I do think he might get ripped apart. He might get laser beamed. But I think it could be a very satisfying death. Like in the sense of like, it would be a great overall character development and then redemption and then, kind of end.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see him having like a Queen Maeve duck out the back door kind of exit. We'll talk about with Butcher and Kessler. Kessler admits that they only have 2 plans for Ryan. It's turn him or kill him. There's no like let Ryan live a normal life.
Which is silly of Billy to think that they would.
Yeah, right. But where this might be piecing together is if Billy isn't so sure that he can trust Kessler anymore, but Kessler's going to keep doing what Kessler's going to do, then he might need to try to go back to Mother's Milk. And if that's the case, and then all of a sudden they have A-Train in their pocket, then maybe they have a high-speed way to get Ryan away from a situation when everything is all set up.
Yeah.
All right. So last question for this group that I had was Huey's mom. She gives her story. Postpartum depression lasted a really long time. If you're Huey, how does this story sit with you?
Well, Huey's a softie. I mean, he has become hardened by the experience he's had, but I think he's kind of come back around in this season. Like, this season he's very much like not bratty. He's doing his thing, and I think he's in a place to understand what the mom said, and like he was crying, and I think it made sense. It doesn't mean he forgives her, but I think she said the right things to make him not hate her. Although, I don't know, I'm still not convinced. Are you?
I mean, it was a plausible story. I mean, everything about it. I've known a couple women who've admitted to me about postpartum depression and how that feels or how that felt to them. And although it's not, relatable to me as a guy, it is something that I can try to listen to and try to understand. And when I do that, I can hear the truth in what she's saying. And I think I've heard of other women that have done what she does. It's a very rare thing. It's like you don't get a gold star for doing that. That's for sure. Picking yourself over your kid, that's not something our society says is a good way to live. But I understand the choice. And I also understand Huey's dad shutting down communication after she left.
So you believe her story then? You still don't think there's... I believe the postpartum thing and believe, like, yes, someone would do that and it makes total sense. But I don't know if I believe that story. Like, that she... I feel like it's too simple. Or maybe it's just because I'm expecting it to be this kind of other thing. And maybe... I mean, Huey's world is human. So maybe that's just kind of a grounding thing that they're putting in. But it just still feels very odd.
Yeah, I'm gonna lean on this one is as presented until I see something otherwise. For me, it is meant to give Huey something else to worry about, to anchor him into the real human, non-Starlight, non-boys world. But I remain open to the idea that she's more complicated.
Did you see the poster behind them where it was A-Train and it said speedy recovery or something?
Oh, no, hospital. I missed that. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I thought that was funny.
Oh, man. Did you have any other questions about these guys?
I'm thinking I'm reading too much into it, but I was like, you know what? There's so much chaos in the boys that maybe they do need a grounded moment between, and Huey is their grounding element. So it would make sense if it's just that. And he ends up having someone to lose, because actually when he was going to the hospital, I was thinking that, of course, Homelander would be so petty. It would be easy to find where Huey lives or whatever. And I thought he was going to be at the hospital, like, going to kill his dad or his mom or something.
Because he did fly off, but it's more like he just fled the scene.
Yeah. And he keeps saying, I don't know if he would really say it in the other seasons, but he keeps saying, oh, I smell him on you, and like he's used that a lot. And I was thinking, like, would he not smell Huey on A-Train? Or I don't know if he knows what Mother's Milk smells like, but just like if we're like to think he's like a dog and can smell these smells, it's just weird he wouldn't smell it on A-Train.
That might be overthinking it, but good. It's a logical, extension of the world that they've shown us.
Yeah. Well, it's just because they're really presenting that, like, oh, I smell Butcher on you, and like, to Ryan and stuff like that. So I'm like, this plot, if you're going to do that, then you have to assume the other, kind of thing.
We've got your eye on you, boys.
But yeah, might be reading too much into it.
All right. Over at Billy Butcher's house, he has had a discussion with Kessler where he has acquired very strong tranquilizer because he wants to move on this Ryan thing now. That way that he chatted with him, I think that's a very real exploit of those kinds of technologies for like all kinds of nefarious actors around the world, because it's not really monitored by any official channels. the chat in games or that kind of thing. So I'm pretty sure that's a real world way to talk to somebody without it being monitored. So in the last episode, we had mentioned that, or predicted that Billy would go looking for Kessler after being spurned by Mother's Milk. So here he is talking to Kessler, and initially Kessler made it sound like, we'll just get Ryan away and everything will be fine after that. And then at the end, he admits, no, it's one of these two options, kill or train. So does that make Kessler a potential enemy of Billy's at this point, do you think?
I think Billy's really losing options here.
Yeah.
And I think if he had more options, I think, yes, he'd probably be like, okay, oh shit. Like, but honestly, I think he's just trying to get Ryan out. And then he's going to deal with what to do after that. But I do think now he knows. It was interesting that Kessler, it kind of shows the relationship that they've had, like Billy and Kessler, because he revealed the plan right away of like the intention of what they wanted to do with Ryan. And that was kind of giving it away, and I was surprised. And maybe it's because he's like, well, Billy's going to be dead in 6 months. Who cares, right? He's not going to stop us.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was kind of ballsy to let Billy know the plan when he knows that Billy's wants to keep Ryan safe. So, or do they think they can just like get rid of Billy easily? So they were like, he's like, this is what we want. So I'm not going to mess around here. Are you going to help us or not? Maybe that was one of the red flags, right? Obviously, from the title.
Good call. Yeah.
Yeah, for Billy. And it's either going to make him go back to the boys or kind of just go lone wolf on his own and just try to save Ryan himself. And I was proud of Billy because I think in the past he would have definitely just forced him to eat those cookies and probably got taken away. And I was like, are you really just going to do this? And then Ryan's going to turn out just like Homelander if you do exactly what happened to Homelander, being, kind of forced to be this person. And so I was like, that would be horrible for Ryan. And I'm glad that he was like, no, I think he'll come around to it. Because I was actually thinking, my question on my notes was like, why don't they just ask Ryan? Like, he could have told him then, hey, do you want to stay here? Do you want to get away from Homelander? Like, he didn't ask him that question that would have like made him stay.
Do you think that Butcher has what he needs just emotionally, persuasively to get Ryan to come around on his own?
If he does, he hasn't shown it to us because he's had his chance. He had Ryan in custody and he never said anything that helped him. I think he was also grieving at the time. He was grieving Becca.
Yeah.
And that might have been why. And he kind of resented Ryan for it because he was Homelander's kid and didn't, Homelander obviously had raped Becca and stuff like that. So I think that's why he was, kind of at a distance from Ryan at that point. But he hasn't shown that he has that. Though he did give that speech to Mother's Milk in the last episode. So who knows? Maybe he has more of that in him as he's coming to the end of his life that he thinks he's going to die. But he needs to pull out the big emotional guns for Ryan because Ryan needs it. And also I don't think there's any other way that he will willingly go with Butcher, because Butcher in that moment didn't really give him anything. He was like, well, I mean, it's not better over here from back home with Homelander, or else he would have stayed. So I don't think he has it in him, but maybe he'll pull it out in a few episodes.
Yeah, like Ryan was actually teasing him about the 6 months. Well, if it was 1 month, that'd be different,
Yeah.
I worry that Butcher, he's fighting against a lot. Homelander has got Ryan calling him dad, which is kind of a big deal. That's a very familiar, you only really call one person that. Like it or not, Ryan does have some relationship where he recognizes that Homelander's supposed to be his dominant male influence. He's working against that even in this short amount of time that they've been together because of the nature of bringing them together in the first place. It's kind of Butcher's responsibility that Ryan was takeawayable.
Yeah.
He's got a lot to work against, and he's just not used to that. He punches his way out of problems.
Yeah.
So I worry that he's not going to have the right words in enough time. So I wonder what else is going to intervene. Maybe it is going to be Butcher very, very sick, and that will pull on Ryan enough, even if it's just for just a moment, picks Butcher, and that's enough to drive Homelander crazy.
Homelander asked a lot of good questions in this episode to multiple characters, because he also asks Ryan.
He did seem sharper in this episode than usual, didn't he?
Yeah, like emotionally, like he knows what's wrong with him in a way, right? Like he wants love, he wants this stuff. And it was kind of deep for him to cry in front of Ryan and also be like, why am I not enough for you? You know, like that was kind of sad. And Ryan's just like, I think Ryan also wants him to be enough, but he doesn't understand why he's not enough to him. But there's obvious reasons why. But I think that's why Ryan kind of stays, because he knows that he cares for him, because he's like crying and stuff. But he even said, but it was funny because in that speech, Homelander says, I've given you everything I wanted. Why aren't you happy? Like, not what he wanted, you know. It was just like he doesn't know how to be a dad because of his fucked up, being raised in a lab.
He thinks he knows what he was missing.
Yes. And it's like not it. But Ryan, when he asks him, what is it about Billy? Why do you have to go back? And again, he asks questions. He asked Victoria the question, why do you want to be president? And then he asks Ryan, and they don't really answer. So it's like, but he's asking really good questions. Like those, like emotionally, like, oh, you asked the right question, but I don't want to answer it because I don't know the answer.
You've already made one prediction that Homelander might just go back to his lab and cathartically kill everybody there. So that's what's one really strong prediction. Do you have any others for the upcoming episode?
I think this one's really outlandish, but maybe he creates another version of himself in that lab.
That one is outlandish, like a backup copy in case Ryan doesn't work out.
Or like that would be the ultimate person that could be his person for love.
A mini-me?
Another version. Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. We'll put those in the back pocket. I think that things will get worse with Huey's dad and make this fragile piece with mom in danger because they'll get closer to needing to decide about pulling the plug, and she's the only one with the decision-making power. It's not a group effort. It's just one person that makes that call. And with the DNR in place, that's the person's own request for themselves. So I think that's going to get pretty tense. I mean, I know there's all this Kimiko Frenchie stuff, but the more interesting stuff for me is always going to be the Homelander, Huey, Starlight, Butcher stuff. So, yeah, I think we're going to see Firecracker turn up the dial and see what we get when she starts talking about higher stakes stuff.
I don't know, but I did really love that Homelander Huey scene, so I hope there's more of that.
Chase through the duct. It's like, I'm 6'3". What am I doing in here? That was pretty good. Well, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to it on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a comment for Kat and I or a question, please go to podclubhouse.com and find this podcast on our listing there. And there's a spot for comments. Just leave us a comment and we'll write back through the website. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.